Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Good morning, viewers. Hope you've been enjoying the episode so far. Today we will be doing Virbhadrasana 2. In Virbhadrasana 2, a practitioner learns to open the legs wide apart, bend the knee wide apart, open the hip, open the pelvis, extend the diaphragm, raise the chest up and open the arms. Since we are talking about so many qualities or quotients of openness, this pose tends to be extremely expansive, creating an abundance of organic space. This is a very important pose to practice and one of the pivotal standing poses. We will now see how to do Virbhadrasana 2. Now we will be discussing some of the body parts that you need to know for Virbhadrasana 2. Starting from the front, the bone that connects the two sides of the breast down the middle is the sternum bone. It ends at the base, and then when you go all the way to the top, it connects or ends at the pit of the throat. From here, the two bones that extend to the side are the collarbones or the clavicles. Going down, on top of the knee is the patella or the kneecap. This cap right in front of the knee, it actually covers the thigh and the shin bones. It's the frontal cap, it's called the patella. This kneecap needs to be locked upwards. Now you see, when it's actually being lifted and held, it's a locked position. She'll now release it to show how it's released. There it's released. This is when you're not in an asana. When you're doing an asana, you have to lock it, as in suck and tighten the kneecap up. This is the action of the kneecap. The bone inside the thigh bone or the femur bone. Turning this way in front. The shoulder, the clavicle, when it moves back, this bone, as in the upper arm bone or the humerus, needs to go towards the back of the socket. Again, this is front. This is not right. It should go towards the back of the socket, the upper arm bone. This is the hip. The outer hip is the area where the femur bone connects with the socket in the outer portion of the hip. It also connects with the groin at the outer part. So this is the inner groin. Coming from in to out, that would be the outer groin. Going down, the outer edge of the foot. On the little toe side of the foot, this is the little toe. The side of the foot that comes on the side of the little toe is the outer edge of the foot. Here, as you see, this bridge-like formation is the arch of the foot. This arch of the foot always needs to be lifted. It needs to be given life. When the arch of the foot drops like this, then it spoils the alignment of the entire pose and the life of the spine too. This arch should always be lifted such that the outer edge of the foot that we mentioned gets pressed. Across the back body, from the line of the shoulder all the way until the last rib, that's the floating rib. The entire surface is made up of ribs called back ribs. This back ribs must always engage sharply forward in front. When it exits, it slouches or hunches the back. It should be pulled in sharply. Going down, particularly important for Virbhadrasana 2 and all standing poses. When you go down the spine, you come to a flat surface. This flat bone here, which doesn't have the projecting processes, this flat bone here is called the sacrum. The sacrum ends in a pinpointed bone called the tailbone. Again, flat bone sacrum, pinpointed bone, tailbone. These are the parts of the body that you need to know for Virabhadrasana 2. Now we will demonstrate how to do Virabhadrasana 2. Take your hands in front of your chest. Jump, open your legs wide apart, at least 4 feet apart. After you jump, for the initial portion, take the hands down on your waist. The outer edge of the foot that we mentioned needs to be pressed firmly in such a way that the arch is opened. We also mentioned the outer groin or the outer hips. The outer groin must not fall in front, it needs to be opened and then pushed with the thigh backwards. So the groin should be opened and the thigh needs to be pushed backwards. So the outer hip and outer ankle need to be in a line, the ankle, the outer edge of the foot needs to be pressed. From there, you raise the chest up, sternum always stands tall. You have to widen the collarbone and make sure that the shoulder engages towards the back of the socket. The shoulder should not hang in front. From there, you will have to turn the right foot completely outside. When the right foot turns outside, many times a student only turns the foot at foot level, therefore keeping the knee hanging in front and the groin hanging in front. So when the leg that is turned out, you see the foot here is turned out, but if you see the knee is actually front facing. The groin doesn't open, it's still front facing. You can see from the knee that the knee is pointed in that direction. It's not turned out. That's almost like breaking something when you turn it in one direction and turn it in the other direction. That must not happen. Therefore, with giving a mild bend to the knee, you have to really rotate the root of the thigh, the groin inside out. When you really rotate the groin inside out, you have to maintain a crisp grip on the outward rotation so that when you do that and then straighten the knee, you have a knee that is also facing out like the foot. This is proper action where the entire leg as a single action is rotated. The former action where it's half rotated and half not should be avoided. When the leg is turning out, usually the opposite side of the hip has a tendency to fall in front. Therefore, it's important to press the outer edge of the foot, grip that hip back while turning this leg out. When that happens, there is a complete opening of the hip as well as the chest, and that expansion, that width is what we are seeking as primary in Virabhadrasana 2. From there, keeping the knee turned out, you will have to bend until the femur comes parallel to the ground. So there you have to press the outer foot, you have to grip the hip back, and in the frontal leg you have to descend until the base thigh comes parallel to the ground. Here, while the leg is going, you have to fight to keep the spine up and alive. The spine or chest should not sink. Tall spine, long spine and rooted thigh. From there, the practitioner has to press the back leg and then come up, pushing down on the back leg, lifting the chest up. Then you turn your foot in front, jump, feet together. Now we'll be heading to the full pose in Virabhadrasana 2. So, starting with where we left, you take your hands in front of your chest, widely, expansively jump, legs 4 feet apart. The entire purpose of Virabhadrasana 2 is to get a good expansion. There are 3 qualities: you elongate, you expand, and then there is an internal expansion. In Virabhadrasana 2, the space inside the body needs to expand the way you fill air in a balloon. It needs to expand, more space. And so for that, the entire surface of the body must be open, hips should be open, diaphragm should be open, floating ribs should open and stand tall. From there, keeping the hands wide, you turn your right foot again completely out. As I said, turn from the root of the thigh, groin inside out, knee inside out, foot inside out. The back leg should mildly turn in and then grip on the outer side, groin open. From there, lifting, making sure the chest is spread wide, abdomen stays lifted yet spread, hip is spread. You take the root of the thigh on the right side completely down until the base thigh is parallel to the ground. While that happens, it's common to have the spine fall this way. You have to make sure that you're thinking that you're extending the pose on the opposite side. You have to grip the spine right from the tailbone, lumbar, dorsal, dorsolumbar. The entire spine has to be pulled in this direction while the leg bends on the opposite direction. Once that is done, stamping the back leg, you have to raise the sides of the body and come up tall. You turn your foot in and jump, feet together.
You say I shouldn't allow my spine to fall over the bent knee, but I feel mine is. So what can I do to correct that?
Yes, actually the spine, as you see, is tending towards the bent leg side. This is a straight spine, that is a fallen spine. How do I know it's fallen? This hip is sinking, this hip is raising up, this femur bone is not even participating, it's out. These are many flaws with the pose. The chest is also sinking. If the spine falls on the bent leg side, many things can go wrong. We'll see how to address it now. You can come up. I'd like you to go towards the edge of the mat. Place your left foot against the absolute edge of the mat. The foot should be both pressed down into the ground and against the wall. Keeping that in mind, take the other leg wide, as in the right leg wide to Virbhadrasana. 2 stance, at least 4 to 4.5 feet apart. Now I'm coming to how the hips should be. As we saw, when the pose falls, one femur exits. It's important to keep the femur in the socket. So you have to hold the femur in on both sides. When that happens, the side of the body should stand tall, the collarbone should be wide. As far as the back leg is concerned, press the outer edge of the foot down and into the wall. The kneecap should be firmly locked. Hold the kneecap, tighten it and lift the quadricep up. Keep the femur in place. Now here, I'd like you to take the left hand and keep it cup shaped on the wall at the level of the shoulder. Make sure that the hand is in line with the shoulder. If it's in front, the chest will sink. So I'd like you to keep it in line with the shoulder. There, I'd like you to turn your right foot completely out, but right when you're turning the leg, this is where the spine tends to fall. So as you turn your foot out, you have to build the spine towards the left side. So right foot turned out, right root of the thigh turned out, right knee turned out, but spine towards the left side. That orientation of the spine is beyond midline, more towards the left side. Make a note of that. There, I'd like you to extend the right hand out, cut the root of the thigh down to a 90 degree, gripping the left thigh back. So the root of the thigh, as it goes, the more and more the thigh bends, the more and more the spine should search for the left side. It should prevent a fall no matter what. So searching for the left side, bend the root of the thigh down. As that happens, to complete the pose, you have to turn your head and look at the palm. Now, to what extent do you turn your head? You have to turn your head until your left eye is able to look at the right little finger. Your eyes should come in line. To that extent, your cervical neck should rotate. Raise your chest up, press down on your back leg and then come up. As you come up, turn your leg in and join your legs together.
sometimes I feel in my effort to reach the pose, my spine falls forward. I'm unable to pull back my shoulders. So, is there something I can do for that?
Yes, I'd like you to wait in this pose for a while. You mentioned that you feel that you're falling with your shoulders. See, you want to think of the spine as a building block, starting from the tailbone, sacrum, lumbar, dorsal, cervical. So, what you say is falling with your shoulders also means projecting the tailbone or buttock back. So, on one side this is wrong, but on the other side it starts with projecting the buttock and tailbone back. There is a very neat prop called the Tressler with which we can address that. I'll show you how to do it now. This is a Tressler, it's also called a horse. What I'd like you to do is you're doing on the left side. So, I'd like you to stand with your right outer edge of the foot against this end of the Tressler. Stand close to the Tressler, not too much of a gap, and then take the other leg far away, Virbhadrasana stance. First, we'll talk about the fall of the spine. I'd like you to, at the top, crisply hook your hands around the Tressler. There is the top wooden bar, that's the one the arm goes around. You have to curl your shoulders far back towards the back end of the socket. Then you see there is the wooden bar against which your back ribs are. Try and lift the back ribs away from it. So, shoulder back ribs in front. And then there is the bottom metal bar. As you can rightly see, it prevents the buttock from going any further back. So, the tailbone also remains aligned. As you move to Virabhadrasana, this grip with the shoulder back needs to remain, but you can loosen your grip in order to travel. Here, turn the left foot completely out. Make sure the chest is lifted and stays far back. Lengthening the sacrum and sucking the sacrum tailbone inside, inward towards the direction of the pubis. Go down to Virabhadrasana 2. And as you go down, I'd like you to raise your chest. Make sure the spine is held back. Make sure the tailbone is long and integrated, knees crisply rolling back. As you can see, end to end, it also gives an opening to the pelvis. Here you have to press the back leg and then come up, knowing that the fall that you initially talked about is well controlled with this prop, the Tressler.
When I try to reach the 90-degree angle, I feel that I get some pain in my knee at times.
See, actually, it's pertinent to note that there are a couple of things going on here. First, your knee is ahead of your toe. It's not at a 90 degree. That's one thing. The second thing is, even if you were to adjust, you see how you're pushing from the knee. The king of the knee joint is the pelvis. So, you have to know that your pelvis has to open, therefore the knee has to open. The larger joint of the pelvis needs to be functional. You can't just push the knee joint back. So, we'll see a better way to address that now, but it's a good question, because if you bend with the knee projecting either over your toe or forward, it can be painful on the knee. That should not be done. So, I'll take you to the wall. I'd like you to stand facing the wall. Open your legs wide, stand facing the wall. Okay, and keep the back leg toe touching the wall. In fact, both legs toe touching the wall from where you turn the right foot completely out. Remember, I said many people think a knee should be directly operated through the action of the knee itself. But the ruling joint for the knee is the pelvis. The pelvis has to open if the knee has to turn. Okay. So, if the pelvis should open, the tailbone should not project, the buttock should not project. So, opening the pelvis means taking the tailbone in. That is the way by which we have to maneuver this pose. So, keeping the leg there, you turn the right foot, thigh completely out. Okay. And after that, go to the pose. Now, as you go to the pose, you see how your knee, your hip is here, but your knee is somewhere there, closing the pelvis. This is an action where the pelvis is absolutely suffocated. I now will insert a soft block. This is a soft block, it's not a heavy block, it's a foam block. This soft block goes between the knee joint and the wall. With this, I'd like you to take the root of the thigh completely down. You have to open the inner thigh to the outer thigh, inner groin to the outer groin, taking the tailbone in and raising the chest up. Here, as you see, with the distance adjustment, neither is the knee going ahead of the toe, nor is the knee falling in front. This is a healthy knee. Now, removing this, pressing the back leg, you can come up. This is the way by which you can practice that. As I said again, neither does the knee go in this direction nor in this direction. The pelvis has to open for the knee to function. Yeah? We now saw how to do Virabhadrasana 2, both the classical way and using props. You see how the usage of props creates very nuanced benefits. How the knee should be aligned, how the hip should be aligned, how the spine should be. These are qualities that constantly refine a pose and better it, and therefore deliver the benefits that a pose must have. In poses like Virabhadrasana 2, Prasarita Padottanasana, Parshvottanasana, these are standing poses that create immense strength in the spine. But apart from that, in poses like Virabhadrasana 1, Virabhadrasana 2, Virabhadrasana 3, where one leg does one action and the other leg does another action. For example, as you see in Virabhadrasana 2, the front leg was bent, the back leg was straight. Here, it calls for two different actions, which means the mind should be in a position to govern and be with both actions, where two actions culminate into a single action for the pose. And here we address the beautiful principle as to how duality can become singular. Though the actions can be several, they culminate into a single principle for the asana, thus addressing a philosophical perspective. There are several benefits to Virabhadrasana 2, starting with the lowest, that is the base of the spine. When we start Virabhadrasana 2 itself, we make sure that the pose is wide. When we get to width, the hip flexors, the IT band, the adductors, all these portions of the body which generally habitually tend to close as a person ages, it tends to reverse that. These areas get opened, they get better expansion, more mobility. Coming to the diaphragm, when we do Virabhadrasana 2, the diaphragm opens from center to side, expanding the diaphragm. It is very important, or a ground rule for pranayama, that the diaphragm must be able to contract and expand. That is, after all, the basis of breathing. Regular practice of Virabhadrasana 2 provides that expansion that is very needed for the diaphragm. Moving up, when the hands are outstretched, the joints of the arm, namely the shoulder joint, the elbow as well as the wrist, remain open, strong and exercised, thus providing several benefits to the peripheral joints. To the cervical neck, as you see, in Virabhadrasana 2, we turn our head to look at the palm. When the head turns, the cervical neck goes through a complete rotation. This greatly improves the mobility of the cervical neck. Thus, people with spondylitis, spondylosis of the cervical neck degeneration are greatly benefited. Ultimately, there is only one ground rule. An asana, when rightly done, is nothing but a package of benefits and much more. But an asana which is wrongly done can be quite detrimental. I've only mentioned a few benefits of Virabhadrasana 2, though the number of benefits are truly countless. Thank you.